Friends, today we shall learn the anatomy of the part which is apparently the most important part of body, through which a person recognizes you, which is your identity. Yes, we are going to study the anatomy of face, when we shall study the various muscles of face, the nerve supply, blood supply, lymphatic drainage, and some applied aspects related to the face. So firstly, let's get acquainted with the structures which are quite apparent and can be appreciated by seeing or by palpating. So here's the diagram of a face. This is the forehead. Forehead is the part between the scalp of an adolescent, the hairline of the scalp of an adolescent, and the supraorbital margins. Here's the cheek, and this is the chin. The word used in anatomy for cheek means the structures related to cheek is buccal, and that the structures related to chin are given the name mental. For example, submental lymph nodes, or mental nerve, or mental submental artery, and so on. Now, touch yourself above the eyebrows. Can you feel a rounded elevation? A rounded prominence above the eyebrows? Yes, these are the superciliary arches present on each side, and these two meet at the nasal bridge, and that point is known as glabella. So these are the superciliary arches above, and where they meet at the nasal bridge, that part is known as glabella. Talking about the various parts of nose, so this part is known as the root of nose. This is the tip. These are the alae, and the ridge separating the sides of nose is known as dorsum. Then this is the philtrum of upper lip. This part is the philtrum of upper lip, which is a small depression above the upper lip. And here is the nasolabial fold, also known as nasolabial groove. It is formed by the levators of upper lip. Now let's talk about various layers of face. So any structure has three layers: the skin, superficial fascia, and deep fascia, and similar is with face. So talking about the peculiar points of skin. So firstly, the skin of face is very vascular, and due to this rich vascular supply, the face it endowes the property of blushing and blanching to face. For example, if someone compliments you, or if you come across your crush, then you will naturally blush, right? So that blushing is caused by the should be credited to the vascularity of face. And also, if someone roasts you or something occurs, then the face will blanch. It will turn totally pale. So the vascularity of face causes the blushing and blanching of face. Then talking about the fixity of certain parts. So the skin over the nose and the auricle, that is the ear, is quite fixed to the quite adherent to the tissue. And so if there is a boil or infection of that part, that will cause it will be very painful. Then talking about the laxity of some parts, like eyelids and other parts. So at certain parts of face, as I said, at the eyelids and some other parts, the skin is very lax, and so any edema or fluid, if there is any edema, then the skin is quite distensible, and the edema is quite apparent on the face. As for example, the renal edema is firstly seen in the eyelids and then in the other parts of body. Also, the skin of face comprises of many sweat and sebaceous glands. The sweat glands cause the regulation of temperature, and sebaceous glands render the skin oily. Then talking about the at certain parts, the skin of face is very thick and elastic due to the insertion of facial muscles, and thus if there is an injury, the wounds tend to gape due to the thickness and elasticity of certain parts. Then coming to the superficial fascia. So the superficial fascia consists of the muscles of facial expression, the nerves and vessels supplying those muscles, and a variable amount of fat. Fat is negligible in other parts, but is quite prominent in the cheeks, where it forms the buccal pad of cheek. And if you come across infants and you pull their cheeks out of affection, you can feel that softness. So that softness is due to the buccal pad of fat, which is present, which is prominent in them, and which allows the sucking, the process of sucking, means while breastfeeding. Now coming to the deep fascia. So deep fascia is prominent in only two regions, around the parotid gland and in the cheeks. That is the deep fascia around the parotid gland is the parotidomesenteric fascia, and that around the cheeks is the buccopharyngeal fascia. So these are the two prominent deep fascia present on the face. So now coming to the muscles of face. So these are subcutaneous muscles present in the superficial fascia. And talking about the embryological aspect, so they are derived from the second branchial arch. And the nerve of the second branchial arch is facial nerve. So facial nerve supplies the muscles of face. Then morphologically, that is the evolutionary basis. So it is derived from the muscle known as panniculus carnosus. It is a thin sheet of muscle present in some animals. Then talking about then the muscles are classified topographically and functionally, but we'll come across these classifications in the coming parts of the video. And a very important point regarding the muscles of face is that they have a bony origin but no bony insertion. They are inserted in the skin. Now we shall discuss the topographical classification of the facial muscles, and they are classified into 6 heads. Now topographical means the muscle pertaining to various regions on the face. There are 6 headings under which we discuss the classification. So firstly the muscles of scalp, then the muscles of the auricle, then the muscles around the palpebral fissure, that is the eye, then the muscles around the nose, then muscles around the mouth, and muscle of neck. So firstly talking about the muscle of scalp, so we have the occipitofrontalis in it. Then we have 3 muscles pertaining to the auricle. The auricularis superior, auricularis anterior, and auricularis posterior. And these 3 are vestigial muscles and are originated from the aponeurosis of scalp, which extends on the superficial temporal region. Then talking about the muscles pertaining to the palpebral fissure. So we have the orbicularis oculi, the corrugator supercilia, and levator palpebrae superioris. Now levator palpebrae superioris doesn't come under the muscles of face. It is an extraocular muscles, but for now we are considering it under this heading. Then we have the nasal fissure, the nose, and we have 4 muscles associated with it: the procerus muscle, then the compressor naris, dilator naris. Now these 2 muscles together are known as nasalis. They are 2 components of the muscle known as nasalis. The compressor is a sphincter of the nasal fissure, and dilator naris, the name itself suggests that it is a dilator of the nasal fissure. And the depressor septi. So we have 4 muscles. Then talking about the muscles around the mouth. So here we have plenty of muscles, but you can divide them into certain groups. One is the sphincter of mouth, that is the orbicularis oculi muscle. Now see, orbicularis oris. Orbicularis oculi is the sphincter of eye, and orbicularis oris is the sphincter of mouth. Then the buccinator muscle, which is also known as the whistling muscle or the blowing muscle. When you blow or you whistle or you expand your cheeks, so that's the buccinator muscle. Then we have 2 zygomatic muscles, zygomaticus major and zygomaticus minor. Then 3 levators, levator labii superioris, levator labii superioris alec nasi, levator anguli oris, and then 2 depressors, and these 2 depressors are just the counterparts of 2 of the levator muscles. Levator anguli oris, levator anguli oris, the counterpart would be depressor anguli oris, and levator labii superioris. Here the counterpart is depressor labii inferioris. So we have 2 depressor muscles, depressor anguli oris and depressor labii inferioris. And remaining muscles are the muscle of chin, that is the mentalis, and the risorius. So we have 11 muscles under the heading of muscles around the mouth, and we have 1 muscle, that is the platysma, which is the muscle of neck. So now coming to the functional classification of the facial muscles. So these are classified into the sphincters and dilators of various fissures, the 3 fissures on the face. We have 3 fissures. One is the palpebral fissure, that is the eye; nasal fissure, that is the nose; and oral fissure, that is the mouth. And all the pertaining to all these 3 fissures, we have only 1 sphincter, but many dilators. Firstly, talking about the palpebral fissure. So the only sphincter of this fissure is the orbicularis oculi, and the dilators are the frontalis, the frontal belly of frontoccipitalis muscle, and the levator palpebrae superioris. Then talking about the nasal fissure, so we have the compressor naris as the sphincter of this fissure, and the dilators are the dilator naris, depressor septi, and the medial slip of levator labii superioris alec nasi. Then talking about the oral fissure, so here the sphincter is orbicularis oris, and the dilators are all the muscles of the mouth pertaining to the mouth except the sphincter, that is the orbicularis oris, and the mentalis. So now we shall discuss the origins of various muscles. And orbicularis oculi, orbicularis oris, and buccinator. These three are complex to understand, so we shall discuss them afterwards. For now, we are discussing only the muscles except these three muscles. So, origins may be classified into the muscles which have a bony origin and those which don't have a bony origin, means they originate from certain fascia. Firstly, coming to the muscles which have a bony origin. So, we have 5 bones from which the muscles of face, except the 3 which I mentioned, originate. So, we have frontal bone, nasal, maxilla, mandible, and zygomatic. From frontal bone, uh, only the muscle of eye originates. That is the corrugator supercilii muscle. And from nasal bone gives rise to only one muscle, that is procerus. Then maxilla. Now maxilla gives rise to the muscles of nose, except procerus, and the elevators of upper lip, that is the levator muscles. So the muscles of nose which arise from maxilla are the nasalis, that which comprises of compressor nares and dilator nares, and the depressor septi. So these 3 muscles arise from the maxilla, the muscles of nose, and the muscles of around the mouth originating from the maxilla are the levators, that is the levator levi superior, alec nasi, and levator angulioris. Talking about the mandible, so the depressors and the mentalis, the muscle of chin, it is quite logical as the depressors of lower lip and chin are the muscles pertaining to the mandible. So the depressor levi inferioris, depressor angulioris, and mentalis, these 3 originate from the mandible. And very simple, the 2 zygomaticus muscles originate from the zygomatic bone. Talking about the muscles which don't have a bony origin, that is the muscles which originate from fascia. So we have rhizorius and platysma. So now we shall study the origins of various muscles of face on the diagram of frontal view of the skull, that is the norma frontalis. And without understanding the osteology of norma frontalis, you cannot comprehend the origin of muscles of face properly. I don't have a skull, means I have one, but not the skull on which I can explain the osteology. So I have drawn the diagram, and on this diagram I will explain various osteological points. But you need to have the actual skull in your hand and study the osteology and then relate the anatomy with the osteology. So that's the work on your part, that you should take the actual skull in your DS table and study the osteology. But for now I am playing my part by explaining through the diagram. So firstly, which bones are present in the frontal view? So I have underlined those bones with the blue marker. So we have frontal bone, nasal bone, zygomatic bone, maxilla, and the mandible. And various osteological landmarks. So beginning with the osteological landmarks on the frontal bone. So if you touch on a forehead, you will find 2 prominences, one on each side, and these are known as frontal prominences. Then just above the supraorbital margin and near the eyebrow, if you palpate, you can feel round ridges, and these ridges are known as superciliary arches, and they fuse at the bridge of nose, the nasal bridge, and between the eyebrows to form a point known as glabella. Now here is the nasal bone, and the 2 nasal bones of one on each side, they fuse in the median plane by the internasal suture, and the nasal bones fuse with the frontal bone by the frontonasal suture. So here is the frontonasal suture and here is the internasal suture. So the point at the intersection of these 2 sutures is known as nasion. So here is the nasion. Here is the orbit, the margin of orbit. This is the supraorbital margin, this is the infraorbital margin, and on the supraorbital margin we have a notch, you can feel it over here. So there is a notch which is known as supraorbital notch. Here is the zygomatic bone, the cheek bone, which forms the prominence of cheek. Then the maxilla, and on the maxilla we have a foramen known as infraorbital foramen, from which the nerve of the same name comes out, infraorbital nerve, and this is a branch of maxillary nerve, the V2 division of trigeminal nerve. Then we have the nasal aperture, the nasal notches of maxilla bones of each side fuse in the center to form the nasal aperture, and this is the mandible, and on the mandible we have a foramen known as mental foramen, from which the mental nerve comes out. So now coming to the origins. So firstly discussing the muscles of eye. So we have 3 muscles, orbicularis oculi, levator palpebrae superioris, and corrugator supercilii. Now we shall not discuss orbicularis oculi and levator palpebrae superioris. As levator palpebrae superioris is a extraocular muscle, not a muscle of face, and the former is to be discussed later on. So talking about the corrugator supercilii, so it originates from the medial part of the superciliary arches. You have the superciliary arches, and from the medial part of the superciliary arch is the origin of corrugator supercilii. Then coming to the muscles around the nose. So we have four muscles: procerus, dilator naris, compressor naris, and depressor septi. And dilator naris and compressor naris together are known as nasalis. So procerus originates from the nasal bone, and it also has a cartilaginous origin as well. It originates from the upper part of lateral nasal cartilage. So it originates from the nasal bone and the upper part of lateral nasal cartilage. Then talking about the components of nasalis. So they originate around the nasal notch, the nasal aperture. Compressor naris originates just lateral to the nose, and dilator naris originates above the lateral incisor, and depressor septi above the medial incisor. Now this can be many times the confusion may occur between these, but there is a simple logic to ward off this confusion. So the LA of nose are lateral to the septum, right? And dilator naris has the function of dilating the LA, and depressor septi has the function of depressing the nasal septum. So the origin of depressor septi is medial to the origin of dilator naris. So it is above the medial incisor, and that of dilator naris is above the lateral incisor. Now coming to the muscles of mouth. Firstly, the easiest to remember muscle, the zygomatic muscles. So the name itself suggests that two zygomaticus muscles originate from the zygomatic bone. And now zygomaticus minor is inserted at the upper lip, and zygomaticus major is at the angle of mouth. And you may say that the upper lip, the part of lip, is anterior to the angle of mouth. So the origin of the muscle which is inserted at the upper lip should be anterior to the muscle inserted at the angle of mouth. So the zygomaticus minor muscle originates from the anterior part of lateral surface of zygomatic bone, and zygomaticus major originates from the posterior part of lateral surface of zygomatic bone. Then muscles originating from the maxilla. So we have the three levator muscles originating from that. So levator labii superioris elec nasi originates from the frontal process, the part of the frontal process of maxilla, the part which articulates with the frontal bone. Then the levator labii superioris originates from the part between the infraorbital margin and the infraorbital foramen. And the levator angulioris originates below the infraorbital foramen from the canine fossa, the fossa above the canine tooth. Then the muscles originating from the mandible. So we have three muscles: depressor angulioris, depressor labii inferioris, and mentalis. So these two depressor angulioris and depressor labii inferioris, originate from the oblique line of mandible anterior to the origin of buccinator. And the mentalis muscle originates below the incisors, the incisor teeth in the from the mandible. So now we shall discuss the various muscles of face and their origin, insertion and actions. So take your notebooks, make 3 columns of origin, insertion and actions, and note down as I explain to you. So firstly, beginning with the muscle of scalp. So the muscle of scalp is occipitofrontalis, which has occipital and frontal bellies, which are known as occipitalis and frontalis. So that is discussed under the scalp. Then we have the auricular muscles, 3 auricular muscles: auricularis superior, auricularis posterior, and auricularis anterior. And these 3 originate from the extension of epicranial aponeurosis, the gallia aponeurotica, in the superficial temporal region. Then coming to the muscles around the eye. So we have orbicularis oculi, you have the orbicularis oculi, and the corrugator supercilii. So the corrugator supercilii originates from the medial aspect of the superciliary arches and is inserted at the mid part of an eyebrow. And it has the action of producing vertical wrinkles above the nose. So if you approximate your eyebrows, vertical wrinkles are formed, right? So that is the function of corrugator supercilii. Then coming to the muscles of nose. So we have 4 muscles, beginning with the procerus. So procerus originates from the nasal bone and the upper part of lateral nasal cartilage, and it has the function of producing transverse wrinkles. So if you raise your eyebrows, some transverse wrinkles are formed, right? So these transverse wrinkles are due to the action of process, and it is inserted between the two eyebrows, the nasal bridge between the two eyebrows. That is the insertion of process. Then talking about the nasalis, that is the dilator naris and compressor naris. It has two components, right? Dilator naris and compressor naris. So nasalis originates around the nasal aperture, and its dilator nasi component originates above the lateral incisor, while the compressor naris originates just lateral to the nose. Now, dilator naris has a function of dilating the nares, right? So it is inserted in the alar cartilage of the nose, and compressor naris is inserted at an aponeurosis. The aponeurosis is present in the dorsum of nose, and their actions are present in the name themselves. Compressor naris has the function of compressing the nasal aperture, and the dilator naris has the function of dilating the nasal aperture. Then we have the depressor septi. So it originates above the medial incisor and is inserted at the lower mobile part of the nasal septum, and its function is also there in the name itself. It has the function of depressing the nasal septum. And as I told earlier, dilator naris is inserted laterally in the LA, so it has the origin above the lateral incisor, and depressor septi is inserted medially, comparison to the insertion of dilator naris. So it has origin above the medial incisor. Then coming to the muscles around the mouth. So firstly talking about the levators. So here's the levator labii superioris alec nasi. It originates from the frontal process of the maxilla, and its insertion is there in the name itself, levator labii superioris alec nasi. So it is inserted in the upper lip, levator labii superioris, the upper lip, and alec nasi, the alley of nose. And it has the action is also there in the name itself, levator labii superioris. So it causes the elevation of upper lip and dilation of the nares. Then we have the levator labii superioris. So it originates between the infraorbital margin and the infraorbital foramen, and is inserted in the upper lip. And the action is there in the name itself, levator labii superioris. It does the action of elevating the upper lip. Then we have the levator angulioris. So this muscle originates from the canine fossa, the fossa above the canine tooth, below the infraorbital foramen, and is inserted at the angle of mouth, which is there in the name itself, as it has the function of drawing the angle of mouth upwards and laterally. So, but naturally it should be inserted at the angle of mouth. So these are the three levators of upper lip, and these levators form the nasolabial fold. This is the nasolabial fold, and it is formed by the levators of upper lip. Then talking about the zygomatic muscles. So we have two zygomatic muscles, zygomaticus minor and zygomaticus major. And zygomaticus minor originates from the anterior part of the lateral surface of zygomatic bone, and zygomaticus major originates from the posterior part of lateral surface of zygomatic bone. And zygomaticus minor is inserted at the upper lip, while zygomaticus major is inserted at the angle of mouth. And as the upper lip, the lip is anterior to the angle of mouth, so it can be correlated that zygomaticus minor is originated from the anterior part of the lateral surface of zygomatic bone, while the zygomaticus major is originated from the posterior part of the lateral surface of zygomatic bone. Now zygomaticus minor has the function of elevating the upper lip, and zygomaticus major has the function of drawing the angle of mouth laterally. Then talking about the depressor muscles of lower lip. So we have the depressor angulioris, depressor labii inferioris. So depressor angulioris, so these two muscles originate from the oblique line of the mandible, anterior to the origin of buccinator muscle. And depressor angulioris is inserted at the angle of mouth, while depressor labii inferioris is inserted at the lower lip. And depressor angulioris has the function of drawing the angle of mouth downwards and laterally, and the depressor labii inferioris has the function of depressing the lower lip, drawing the lower lip downwards. Then talking about the mentalis, so it originates below the incisors of mandible and is inserted in the skin of the chin, and it has the function of draw the protrusion of lower lip, its elevation, and producing wrinkles on the skin of the chin. So protrusion, elevation, and wrinkles. This was due to the mentalis muscle. Then we have the risorius muscle. So as I said, risorius has an origin from a fascia, the fascia around the masseter muscle. It is inserted at the angle of mouth, and it has the action of retraction of the angle of mouth. It retracts the angle of mouth laterally. Then here is the orbicularis oris muscle. And coming to the muscle of neck. So the muscle of neck is platysma. This is the platysma. And as I said, it originates from the fascia, the deltoid and pectoral fascia. And its insertion has two aspects. The anterior fibers are inserted at the base of mandible, and the posterior fibers are inserted at the lower part of face and chin. And it has three actions. Firstly, it releases the pressure of muscles on the subjacent veins. Then it draws the angle of mouth downwards and causes depression of the mandible. So the angle of mouth is drawn downwards and mandible is depressed. So this was the action of platysma. So now let's begin with orbicularis oculi. And before that, let's take a small concept. So behind our eyelids, there is a fascia known as palpebral fascia. And this palpebral fascia has four thickenings. So the upper and lower thickenings are known as tarsi or tarsal plates, and the ones on the sides are known as palpebral ligaments. So this is the superior tarsus, inferior tarsus, and the medial one is known as medial palpebral ligament, and lateral one is known as lateral palpebral raphe. So beginning with the main topic. So firstly, the orbital part. So it has three origins, and two of them are bony, and one is the palpebral ligament. So the bony ones are the frontal process of maxilla and nasal part of frontal bone, and the palpebral ligament is the medial aspect of the medial palpebral ligament. So all the three structures are medial ones, as this is the frontal bone, right? And probably here is the nasal part of frontal bone, and the frontal process of maxilla is also probably here. So and medial palpebral ligament is medial only, and from that to the medial part. So the origin is medially. The origin of this part is medially, and its insertion, it forms concentric rings and comes back to its origin itself. And talking about its action, so it does the function of tight closure of eyes. If you close your eyes tightly, so that would be done by the orbital part of orbicularis oculi. Then coming to the palpebral part. Now the medial part of medial palpebral ligament gives origin to orbital part, right? Orbital part of the muscle. So the remaining part is lateral part of medial palpebral ligament. So that is the origin of palpebral part of orbicularis oculi, the lateral part of medial palpebral ligament, and its insertion is the lateral palpebral raphe, and it has the action of gentle closure of eyes, as in sleeping. Then down at the lacrimal part, so it also has a bony origin, and one is the fascia. So it originates from the posterior crest of lacrimal bone, and from the lacrimal fascia, which encloses the lacrimal sac, and it is inserted at the lateral palpebral raphe. It goes in front of the superior tarsus and is inserted at the lateral palpebral raphe, and it has the action of dilation of the lacrimal sac, which helps the drainage of lacrimal fluid, and it fixes the lacrimal puncta in the lacus lacrimalis. So this pinkish part is the lacus lacrimalis, and the lacrimal puncta, the small openings, are fixed there due to the action of this muscle. So now discussing the orbicularis oris muscle. So it has two bundles, an extrinsic bundle and an intrinsic bundle. So the intrinsic bundle, the fibers originate from bone, they have a bony origin, while the extrinsic bundle is derived from other muscles. Also, there are three strata: superficial stratum, middle stratum, and deep stratum. So deep stratum comes under the intrinsic bundle, and it is quite obvious, as the deep structures are more towards the interior, and the middle and superficial strata come under the extrinsic bundle, as the superficial structures are more towards the exterior, right? So firstly, talking about the intrinsic bundle, so it has two components, superior incisivus and inferior incisivus, and quite easy to understand, as superior incisivus originates from maxilla and inferior incisors originate from the mandible. And talking about the extrinsic bundle, so the middle stratum is the thickest stratum, and it originates from, it is derived from the buccinator muscle, and the superficial stratum is derived from levators and depressors of lips and their angles. And talking about the insertion, so the intrinsic muscles, both are inserted at the angle of mouth, but the extrinsic muscles are inserted at the lips as well, as they are derived from the superficial stratum is derived from the levators and depressors of lip. The muscles of lips are also involved, right? So they are inserted at lips as well, the fibers of extrinsic bundle. And talking about the action of these muscles, so it has the function of closing the mouth. It is the sphincter of the oral fissure, right? And also the protrusion of lips. These were its two functions: closing the mouth and protrusion of lips. Now discussing the buccinator. So it has three set of fibers: upper fibers, middle fibers, and lower fibers. So the upper fibers originate from the maxilla. The maxilla above the three molars and are inserted at the upper lip. Lower fibers are originated from the mandible below the three molars and are inserted at the lower lip. And the middle fibers originate from the pterygomandibular raphe and they decussate with each other. So it is quite easy to remember, as the maxilla is present above, right? And upper lip is obviously present above the lower lip. So the origins and insertions of upper lip, the upper fibers are superior to those of lower fibers. And talking about the action, so it has the action of flattening the cheek against the teeth, and it prevents the accumulation of food in the vestibule, the oral vestibule.
Now we shall recall some points which will help you to remember things easily. So muscles inserted at the angle of mouth. We have four muscles, and two of them have anguli in their name itself, the levator angulioris and depressor angulioris, and remaining two are the zygomaticus major and rhizorius. Then muscles inserted at the upper lip. Now this is also easy, as two of them have levator labii, the labii superioris, the upper lip in their name itself. So levator labii superioris and levator labii superioris alegnesi. The remaining is the zygomaticus minor muscle. And muscle inserted in the lower lip is the depressor labii inferior.
Now we shall talk about the modulus. So the modulus is a small fibromuscular structure, a small mobile fibromuscular structure, 1.25 centimeter lateral to the angle of mouth, and it is formed by 5 muscles, and 4 of them are inserted at the angle of mouth. So we have levator angulioris, depressor angulioris, zygomaticus major, rhizorius, and the buccinator. So these 5 muscles from the modulus. So friends, we convey our emotions through the facial expressions, right? And the muscles of face, which we studied just now, are involved in the production of these facial expressions. And now we shall learn the muscles pertaining to various expressions of face. So beginning with the expression of smile or laughter. So in smiling, the angle of mouth is driven laterally, right? So that is the function of zygomaticus major. So zygomaticus major is the muscle of smiling or laughter. Then grinning. So if you want to show how effective your toothpaste is, you smile by showing your teeth like this, and that is known as grinning. So the angle of mouth is retracted laterally, right? And that is the function of rhizorius. So the muscle of grinning is rhizorius. Now, if someone comes at your doorstep and says that you have won a BMW or you have won a very expensive car or something, then what would be your expression? What would be your reaction? So on the forehead, wrinkles are seen, right? So the wrinkles on forehead are produced by frontalis muscle. So the muscle of surprise is frontalis. Then if you're upset about something, then it would be like, so the lips would be elevated, right? So the muscles of sadness are levator labii superioris and levator angulioris. Then grief, a step above sadness, when you are extremely upset about something. So So then the angle of mouth would be driven downwards, right? So the expression of grief is due to the depressor anguli oris muscle. Then if you don't like something, or if you frown about something, then the muscles involved are the two muscles of wrinkling, that of transverse wrinkles, that is the procerus, and of vertical wrinkles, that is the corrugator supercilium. Corrugator supercilium and procerus. Now if you see something disgusting, then your reaction would be like, so the lip is elevated and the muscle involved is zygomaticus minor. Now if you are angry, so the nares are dilated, right? So we have the dilator nares and depressor septi. Now your favorite muscle, the muscle of kissing, buccinator, also the muscle of blowing and whistling. Now if you are watching a horror movie, or maybe suddenly a dinosaur comes in front of you, what would your reaction? So the neck is tensed, right? And the mandible and the lower lips are depressed. So that is the action of platysma. So platysma is the muscle of horror, terror or fright. Okay, if your exam has been terrible and if someone asks you that what are you expecting, what marks do you expect, so you'd be like, how would I know? So there is an elevation and protrusion of the lower lip and wrinkles on the chin. So the muscle of doubt. So this was a doubt, right? You are in doubt, and the muscle of the expression of doubt is mentalis. So I'll repeat again. The muscle of smiling or laughter is zygomaticus major. Of grinning is risorius, surprise frontalis. Sadness is levator levi superiorus and levator anguli oris. Grief is depressor anguli oris. Frowning or dislike is procerus and corrugator supercilia. Contempt is zygomaticus minor. Anger is depressor septi and dilator nares. Blowing, kissing or whistling muscle is the buccinator. Horror, terror or fright is platysma, and the muscle of doubt is mentalis. So now we shall learn the nerve supply of these muscles of face, or the motor nerve supply of face. So the facial nerve has 5 terminal branches which pass through the substance of parotid gland. The temporal, zygomatic, buccal, margin-mandibular and cervical, and I also give a mnemonic in my video of facial nerve and that of parotid gland, that tu jandu ba mujhe chhod. So that's a mnemonic. So these 5 terminal branches supply the various muscles of face. So the temporal supplies 2 of the auricular muscles, auricularis anterior and auricularis superior. Auricularis posterior is supplied by the posterior auricular nerve, the nerve of the same knee. Then the frontalis, orbicularis oculi, corrugator supercilia and intrinsic muscles on the lateral side of auricle. These muscles are supplied by the temporal branch. Then the zygomatic branch supplies only the orbicularis oculi muscle, but the part of orbicularis oculi in the lower eyelid. So you may say that orbicularis oculi is a hybrid muscle as it has a dual nerve supply. And coming to the buccal branch, so now you know that buccal has 2 branches, upper buccal and lower buccal. The upper buccal lies above the parotid duct and lower buccal lies below the parotid duct. So the upper buccal supplies the levators of upper lip and its angles, the zygomatic muscles and the muscles of nose, the 4 muscles of nose, that is the procerus, dilator nares, compressor nares and depressor septi, and the levators of upper lip, that are the levator anguli oris, levator levi superioris and levator levi superioris alegnesi, and the zygomatic muscle, that is the zygomaticus major and zygomaticus minor, and the lower lip supplies orbicularis oris and buccinator. Then you have the marginal mandibular. So the name itself has mandibular, so it has the structures associated with the mandible or the lower part of face. So it has the 2 depressors of lower lip and the angle, the depressor anguli oris and the depressor levi inferior, risorius and mentalis. And lastly, we have cervical branch. So it supplies only one muscle, that is the platysma. Now, platysma is the muscle of neck, right? So it can be remembered easily. Now, coming to the sensory nerve supply of the face. So it is derived from two nerves. One is the cervical plexus, and other is the trigeminal nerve, which is the main nerve from which the sensory supply is derived. And all the three branches of the trigeminal nerve, that is V1, ophthalmic, V2 maxillary, and V3 mandibular, all the three are involved in the supply of face. So firstly, talking about the cervical plexus, we have two nerves from the cervical plexus. One is the great auricular nerve, that is the C2, C3, and the upper part of anterior or transverse cutaneous nerve of neck. And then coming to the trigeminal nerve. So from ophthalmic division, we have five nerves: supratrochlear, supraorbital, infratrochlear, external nasal, and lacrimal. From maxillary, we have zygomaticotemporal, zygomaticofacial, and infraorbital. And from the mandibular, we have auriculotemporal, buccal, and mental nerves. And to know which parts do these nerves supply, you need to watch my video on trigeminal nerve. Therein I have explained in fullest detail which part is supplied by which branch. Now we shall learn the venous drainage of face. And so venous drainage of face is mainly into two veins: the common facial vein and the retromandibular vein. The veins that accompany the arteries, the branches of facial artery, and ultimately drain to these two main veins, the common facial vein and the retromandibular vein. And I'll explain the diagram and the formation of these veins. So we have two veins, supraorbital and supratrochlear. These two merge to form the angular vein. This angular vein continues as facial vein. Now this facial vein goes downwards and laterally along with the facial artery. And if you study the submandibular gland, you can see there that it comes under the superficial relations of the submandibular gland. So, and it is present near the anteroinferior angle of the masseter. So firstly, the facial vein comes at the anteroinferior angle of the masseter, then pierces the deep cervical fascia, and then goes inferior to the submandibular gland. And on the other side, the superficial temporal vein, the maxillary vein, fuse to form the retromandibular vein, and it divides into two divisions, anterior and posterior division. The anterior division of retromandibular vein combines with the facial vein, and this combination, the merging of these two veins, leads to formation of the common facial vein, and this common facial vein ultimately drains into the external jugular vein. On the other side, the posterior division of retromandibular vein merges with the posterior auricular vein and drains into the internal jugular vein. Now talking about the connections of facial vein, so it has two connections. One is with the cavernous sinus, that is facial vein is connected to the pterygoid venous plexus to the deep facial vein. Then from the pterygoid venous plexus arises the emissary vein, which is connected to the cavernous sinus. And emissary veins are the valveless veins which connect the extracranial veins to the intracranial venous sinuses. So this was the pathway of connection of facial vein with the cavernous sinus. Other connection is with the supraorbital and the superior ophthalmic vein, these two veins. So this venous drainage is very important clinically, as if there is any infection of this facial vein drains sinuses as well. So if there is an infection of maxillary sinus, then the infection can spread to these two through the connections of facial vein. It can spread to these two sites. Through its connection with the cavernous sinus, it can cause cavernous sinus thrombosis, and through its connection with the superior ophthalmic vein and supraorbital vein, which are the veins of eyeball, quite apparently in their name itself. So they can cause orbital cellulitis, a condition of eyeball. Moreover, this area is known as dangerous area of face, below the nose and above the upper lip, and the adjoining part of cheek, that is known as the dangerous area of face, as it is drained by the facial vein. And any pustule or any boil, if you try to burst it, then the infection may spread to the facial vein, and it may be carried by the emissary veins to the cavernous sinus. And emissary veins are valveless veins, so their flow isn't hampered by anything. And so cavernous sinus thrombosis may occur, which is a serious condition, an emergency condition. So this area is known as dangerous area of face. So never mess with any pustule or boil which occurs in this area. So now let's discuss the lymphatic drainage of face. So the lymph from the face is drained into three lymph nodes: the preauricular or the parotid lymph nodes, then the submandibular lymph nodes, which comprise of the majority of the lymphatic drainage of the face, and the submental lymph nodes. Now there is a long list under submandibular lymph nodes, but you don't need to cram that. You just need to learn the parts drained by preauricular and the submental lymph nodes, and the counterparts of those parts are drained by the submandibular lymph nodes. So I'll show what I'm trying to say. So, so the upper part of forehead, the two lateral halves of the forehead, are drained by the preauricular lymph nodes, and also the lateral part of upper eyelid, the lateral part of eyelids and the upper part of cheek. So these three parts are drained by the parotid or the preauricular lymph nodes, that is the lateral part of forehead, the lateral part of eyelids and the upper part of cheek. Then the submental lymph nodes drain the median part of the lower lip and the chin. So the remaining part, the entire remaining part is drained by the submandibular lymph nodes. So we have the lateral part of forehead by the preauricular lymph node. The remaining part is the median part of forehead. So that is drained by the submandibular lymph nodes. Then we have at the lateral part of eyelids drained by the preauricular lymph nodes. So the medial part of eyelids is drained by the submandibular lymph nodes. Then we have the nose. Then the upper part of cheeks was drained by the preauricular. So the remaining is the lower part. So that is drained by the submandibular lymph node, right? Now coming to the lips. So the upper lip, its philtrum, and the lateral half, the lateral parts of the lower lip. So this much is drained by the submandibular lymph nodes. So summing up, the submandibular lymph nodes drain the the median part of forehead, the medial parts of the eyelids, and the angles of eye, the nose, the lower part of cheek, the upper lip, and lateral parts of the lower lip. So this much is drained by the submandibular lymph node. The applied aspect of face has Bell's palsy, the paralysis of facial muscles which occurs due to the injury to facial nerve at the stylomastoid foramen. But I have discussed it under the video of facial nerve. And another one is the trigeminal neuralgia, and I have discussed that too under the video of trigeminal nerve. So this was all about the anatomy of face. I hope you enjoyed learning with me. Thanks for watching.